coming from the military, you're naturally a resilient person. You're used to having obstacles in your way that you can overcome. And so at first it was like that, okay, I'm not getting a call back from this, or I'm not sure what path or direction I'm going to take. That's okay. We'll figure it out. We've been in situations like this before. But eventually each one of those little I call them, whether it's a mini failure or a mini roadblock, whatever you want, each one of those start to add up to where they become cumulative. And so for me, it got to the point where I was like, okay, you look at where you were 6 months ago versus where you're at today. And in my case, I was like, okay, 6 months ago, I was leading multiple teams in Iraq. We had clear mission, purpose, and direction every single day. Like, you would get up and you would never have the question of what are we doing today? It was already pre-planned days and weeks before that. And so going from that to just the ambiguity of I'm going to wake up and I don't know what's going to happen. And I've already had a few failures happen, meaning that I'm not hearing back from any of these jobs that I applied to. And that just continued for a long while. And at that point, you would think that a red flag be raised of, okay, this isn't working out. Let's figure out what the core root of this is, what the cause is of why we're not getting callbacks, and let's start to make some changes and figure out where we can go from here. But being the dumb 25-year-old John, I was like, they just don't get it. We'll just keep putting it in. We're not going to change anything. The more we apply, eventually we're going to get a bite on it. And for me, that frustration creeps in. You start to feel like a failure, really, because again, comparing yourself like where you were 6 months ago versus where you're at today it's not what I was expecting where I would be. And so for me, all of that, I just wanted to have a way to escape. And for me, and I know it happens to a number of other veterans and it's pretty unfortunate, but we turn to alcohol, drugs in some cases as a potential coping mechanism for that. And so for me, it was alcohol. The setting and environment I was in wasn't exactly conducive to sobriety, meaning that the rest of my teammates, they were still active military, and I was living with a few of them. And Friday and Saturday come around and everyone's partying. We have the whole team over at our house, lighting off fireworks, getting the cops called on us, being a bunch of ruffians. But yeah, and that was how I drowned out those frustrations, at least temporary. Like anything with alcohol, like once you start to sober up, it comes back and you're back in the same situation, if not worse, than where you were before. In my case, I've always been someone that's into fitness, that's into running and working out, and I wasn't doing any of that. That kind of plays into another point I have of creating micro goals for yourself as you transition out. I didn't have those micro goals. I wasn't running. I wasn't checking a box to do my daily workout. And that led me to gaining 40 or 50 pounds in 5 or 6 months as I got out. So that just piled on all those micro failures that I was already having. And then for me, it led me down a pretty dark path with that, because you combine the weight gain that I was having with all of the frustrations of not hearing back from employers, and then alcohol being a depressant itself. All that combined to me to where I found myself probably 3 or 4 months into my transition, being on a dark path where, pretty much every weekend, everyone else in the house would go to bed, and I'd go to bed, you're drunk, and I would just sit in my bed I had a handgun that sat on the side of my bed, and I would just put that to the side of my head and just think, was it really worth it? The thing that got me out of it, at least initially, to build that momentum going forward, was trying to get back into fitness. So I took a long, hard look in the mirror and I said, okay, we're going to start to set micro goals. We're going to get back into running. We're going to start off this week. We're going to run a single mile. It come from someone I've always maxed out my runs on my PT tests, and that first run, I had to stop doing a mile run. And I was like, man, okay, I cannot quit at a half mile and turn back. We're going to at least finish it. We're going to get this mile done. We're going to check that box. So did that, and then it just progressed. Like you start to build that momentum. The week 2 was 2 miles, week 3 was 3, and so forth, building up to the double digits. And that, I think, is what really started to, at least initially, start to get that wheel moving and start to build that snowball to get that momentum to drive out of that dark place.